Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I'm your host, Dr. Haider Shah. On behalf of Kalwas, I would like to welcome all of you to this webinar. Thank you very much for joining us. Today, we have another very interesting topic, and I'm really honored to welcome and introduce our distinguished guest speaker who is going to talk about developing immersive learning program for higher education. Immersive learning is a huge, effective way of for many learners to develop their knowledge and skills. It provides artificial, digitally created content and environments that accurately replicates real life scenarios so that the new skills and technique can be learned and perfected. Learners aren't simply passive spectators, they get to be active participants who directly influence the outcomes. So, indeed, a very interesting topic, and I'm sure in this session you are going to learn new amazing things because we have an expert with us in today's this session. So stay tuned because an amazing stuff are coming ahead this session. So before we start, I would like to thank Kalwas for arranging such enlightenment sessions for their support and providing us such a wonderful platform. The aim of Kalwas is to give you the opportunity to connect and interact with world-renowned speakers, academic leaders, teachers, authors, researchers, experts, professionals, and businessmen to learn from their experiences, recommendations, and suggestions, which will create an impact and will enable you to learn and develop yourself in order to grow and transform individually, as well as to contribute to the world in a positive way. As our slogan is come, learn, and share knowledge. So today we have an amazing person as guest uh, who has a multi-dynamic personality with a wonderful experience, internationally known and recognized speaker. He is a great human being who is always ready to support and contribute to the world in different positive way. So let me introduce him formally. He is a learning futurist, the tinkering with and designing technologies that may better inform the future of teaching and learning. His projects have included augmented tourism rallies, the AR community art exhibitions, mixed reality escape rooms, and other experiments in immersive technology. You can know more about his research projects and online courses through the link we have added in the description of this session. Please visit the link to know more about him. Last but not the least, he is a wonderful speaker, author, teacher, researcher, professional, and above everything, a great human being. So please help me in welcoming our guest, Mr. Eric Hawkinson. Welcome to the Calvas platform, and thank you very much for joining us, Prof.
Thank you very much for having me, Dr. Haider Shah. That's very kind words to introduce me. I don't know. I'll try my best to, at least in part, live up to your high praise of my in that kind introduction. Thank you so much, and it's very special to me to be here, especially interacting with people in this part of the world because I don't get exposed to living in Japan to people around this part of the world. So this is a very special time for me, and I hope to make many new connections in the process.
Thank you very much for joining and accepting our invitation. It's really pleasure to have you. So over to you, Prof. Thank you.
Oh, thanks very much. Oh, yes. All right. So immersive learning. We're going to do a bunch of stuff, I hope, today and introduce some of these topics to you. And some of them you may know about, some of them are maybe new topics to you. But I have a couple of things that I try to get through today to kind of help us understand some of these things. And so my idea is that I would like to build some context for us, meaning try to explain this technology, maybe a little bit about the history and how we've gotten from there to here with this technology, and then maybe take that context and show you some of the projects and research that I've been doing around this in the last 10 or 15 years, mostly here in Japan. And then I want to invite you to join me and my colleagues, my research colleagues, and my communities, mostly here in Japan, that are doing wonderful things to use augmented virtual reality and other things to connect with each other, to share stories and our cultures and our language and so forth. So, time permissible, I hope to kind of level up as we go through this session today by building context, trying to show you what's possible or what's in use today in the world with these research and projects, and then invite you to get your hands dirty, as it were, and try and use some of these technologies yourself. If I go through something that you might not understand or you want to get some extra materials or context of it, as a learning technologist, I'm pretty good at putting everything online. So please visit my website or another website. Try to be putting links in the chat as well. Um, every once in a while, I might check in with the chat. I see my friend Ramon that's here. I haven't seen since high school in the chat already. So it's very nice to see some people that I know. So I might pop this up from time to time. There's already some chats in there. I can say hello, Ramon, because that's one person I recognize already in the chat. So very nice to see you here, Ramon. Thank you very much for showing up. All right. So that's the agenda for today. Let's try and get through here. Let me tell you just very briefly about me and my roles so you know where I'm coming from. I was born in America. I grew up in Arizona. I moved to Japan 20 years ago. I had a background in IT before then, and then I started teaching. So those worlds of technology, IT, and education, and my passion for education kind of melded together. And ever since then, I've been doing research and projects and developing things around the intersection between technology and education. And that led me to emerging technologies in the past 10 years, which includes making what started out in things like making things like ebooks and websites turned into making virtual reality environments and augmented reality tools for learning. I also help coordinate research for a group here in Japan called MAVER, Mixed Augmented Virtual Realities and Learning. It's mostly a group in higher ed, and they're doing work related to helping people learn how to immerse themselves and learn languages in virtual reality. So they're doing a whole bunch of wide range of interesting research and projects that I might introduce in today's talk. And if you're interested, I might be able to help facilitate a meeting or connect you with some of these other researchers in this part of the world. I started my own company during the pandemic because there was this hunger, this need for using this technology to help us feel a little bit closer together, right? Mostly in a project I'll share later on, we lost the ability to study abroad. At my university, we lost more than 90% of the ability to send students abroad for study abroad programs. And even worse, there was less students coming in. So our students were not getting exposed to other places, other languages, other cultures as much as we want to. And I tried to facilitate that using virtual reality as much as I could. I'm also a big proponent of TED. TED is as a tool for learning and exchanging ideas. It's wonderful, and the community is so optimistic and friendly. And I just got immersed in this group of people that is a global community all around the world. And so I can't say enough good things about TED. And so I like to devote a little bit of my time and effort and enjoy TED. So that all these things might come up in our talks today. I also try to connect technology with more human kind of centric things. So you might kind of pick up on some of my themes and what I try to work on. Although I try to keep on the edge of technology, I'm in groups like I'm a Adobe education leader, I'm a certified Google innovator, a Microsoft expert. But I really try to think about these new technologies, what I like to think about anyway, these new technologies coming around the corner and how they're going to impact us as humans, as teachers, as schools, and how we're going to start holistically and practically integrating technology as it gets kind of seeping into every aspect of our lives, to our health, to our relationships, to how we communicate, now our currencies and our how we run government. And I teach a lot of classes here at the Kyoto University of Foreign Studies related to those topics. So that might come up today as well. I teach. I love teaching. These are some of the courses I teach at the university, basically at the kind of intersection between technology and a lot of other subjects. So using augmented and virtual reality in the tourism hospitality industry. I teach taking game design, game theory, and putting that into marketing and business and tourism. And I also am a big advocate for digital literacy, which means trying to help our younger generation navigate the world in which having the skills to use digital and other technologies to help improve their stake in life. So a little bit about what I do and my passions. And at any time, I'll pop back into the YouTube chat, and if there's any questions, I'll try to address them as we go along, or Dr. Haider might help us curate some at the end as well. Immersive technology. Anybody familiar with this term? Immersive technology. Immersive learning is another term right down here as well. Immersive technology is kind of a category, a whole suite of technologies kind of grouped together as you might think of them. So many people might be familiar with terms like virtual reality and augmented reality. Those are considered the more popular kind of bookends of this technology, but it also includes a whole host of other things. And virtual and augmented reality is so many things as well. So many people think of virtual reality as having a headset on, or augmented reality as following digital Pikachu and Pokemon Go around, but it's so much more. It's a whole suite of technologies, and now we have a whole range of realities, plural, that we're starting to blend and copy the real world and put digital versions and digital twins on top of them. So we're going to have this whole spectrum of realities, plural. So now we don't only have augmented reality and virtual reality, we have mixed reality, we have extended reality, diminished reality, all these other terms that are starting to come out as these emerging technologies are developed and brought out into the world. And we just take those suite of technologies and put them in educational context, and that comes out with the term immersive learning, which is a fairly new term up until, I would say, the 2015, 2016, around there when this started being used. Immersive learning was basically a term used for people studying language, that they would, instead of learning it in a classroom, you would actually go to a different country and immerse yourself, immersive learning in the same. But it's similar idea, right? You're being immersed, you're being put inside of a world, a situation, a simulation, and you're immersed in whatever content, educational content that might be presented to you. There's a couple of different ways you can think about this technology. And one way I like to tell people to think about it is sort of a evolution in communication technology. So we go from print to recordings to radio to internet, now new and immersive media. So media and its evolution and how it changes the way we communicate, that changes the way we get creative in a way. And each step along the way has a whole different paradigm about how it's used in education. So you can see that in the way it's used and brought forth in history. So just to give a couple of examples, right? So we have books and print before, right? It's the age of wordsmiths, right? If you are able to put words together in the right way that are so interesting and put pictures into people's minds, you were considered, of value. Your creative efforts are of great value. And that changed again when we got the phonograph and other things like that. Your voice and going up and down and how your cadence works was all important. And you had a whole new set of skills. Television, right now we can see you acting, and that brought in studio type effects, like having to have stagecraft and other things added to the media. And now with the mobile era and things like this, with our pockets, we have that studio and everything, the media that came before it in our pockets. And now we're all our own movie studios, making TikTok dance videos and tutorials on YouTube and all that fun stuff. But now what's going to happen is, right, all those kind of skills that happened before it. You're the wordsmith, you're the voice actor, you're the television personality, and then you're the studio and being able to edit and all those skills on top of it. We're going to put a bunch of skills on top of those, because now all those medias that were in your pocket with all the books and everything that came before it, now we're going to start taking all of that information out of your pocket and start connecting it to every place, every person, everything, every object, a mood perhaps. All these data points that are being put out into the world are now going to be connected with some sort of data, and not just in our pockets. So all those books, those movies, those digital contents are going to start being put it connected to the world in places, in ways that we can't even quite begin to imagine quite yet. It's almost like a science fiction type scenario. Um, one way that I like to analogize this is as a story of I'm a father. I have a young daughter. She's 7 years old, and she went up to the television screen when she was 2 years old, not 2 years old, maybe 3 or 4, and tried to go up to the TV and tried to swipe it. Right? If you're a father or you have young children in the house, you may have had this happen to you. But what's happening here is we have somebody in the mobile era that's used to going up and having a tactile reaction response to their touch on a touch screen in the mobile era, going up to something in the television era and expecting some sort of response to it. And of course, it doesn't happen. And if you're an adult and you look at that and you're like, ha ha, you don't know how television works. But really, they're just one evolution beyond it. You go a step further, and my daughter's daughter is going to go up to a door and swipe it, and thinking that something's going to happen because she's going to have the knowledge or the assumption that anything she does out in the real world will have consequences in a digital form one way or another. So maybe a camera will already know her presence in front of the house. Some facial recognition software will know who she is, or maybe she might have some device that's on it and watches her do a gesture on the door, and therefore the door unlocks and opens or something like that, right? So you go for these kind of progressions of, your television is sending information to you. Then the mobile era, you are integrated, you're connecting with that with a physical sense, and then to the augmented virtual reality era, where everything you do, all the data is connected, no matter if there's a screen present or not. Hopefully that kind of makes sense of where we're heading in the future with this. All right, another way to think about it is it's a bridge. It's a bridge between real life and digital contents, right? So all these kind of new emerging technologies, artificial intelligence, the Internet of Things, cloud and edge computing, 3D printing, it's my contention, it's my sort of, it's still, the jury's out on this, it's still disproven, but it's my contention that all of these new and emerging technologies, the preferred medium from which humans interact with them, the way that we're going to use these things more deeply moving toward the future are going to be through virtual and augmented reality type interfaces, right? We're seeing this already in empathic computing, where we went from cards that when we want to put information into a computer, we had punch cards, and then we had keyboards and mice, and now we have our voice assistants where we use our voice, and then gestures from a camera, and now we have already with Elon Musk's company, for example, putting probes on our head and being able to understand some of our synapses and thoughts, and being able to put forth our thoughts into machines. And so these virtual and augmented tools take in more of this data, more humanistic data, more empathic computing. And so we're going to be interacting with these things a little bit more humanistic, I think is a word I'm trying to think of for that. And so moving forward, you can see sort of this bridge becoming more important through the tools of virtual and augmented reality to kind of interface with these newer emerging technologies coming around the corner. So this is just a kind of spectrum. So you can see we are in the real world, but actually we're not. We're kind of augmented already, because what you see behind me is not the real world. It's already digital contents, and now we're on the internet, and it's augmented with chats and everything like that. So we're not really in the real world, but we're starting to augment it in some way. And then you want to go to the other end of the spectrum, where everything you see, everything you touch, everything you smell, everything you experience is a simulation, and therefore it's completely virtual construct. And so as educators moving towards the future, we're going to have to think about where we want to be in this spectrum when we design for our curriculum, our students, our classrooms, etc. Because in certain situations, we will want to be completely real. In some situations, maybe it's too dangerous or too expensive. We want to simulate it to get you maybe 80%, 90% of the way there. And being able to come in and out of these or mix these in certain ways might be something a instructional designer or a curriculum developer in the future will have to consider when developing, especially using these newer tools. This is me in my laboratory having some fun in virtual reality. It's a game called Beat Saber. It actually helped me get back into shape. This is actually mixed reality. So this is what I see in front of me are blocks flying at me, but I have a real camera that's matched up with a virtual camera. So I'm being put into the virtual world and then sending that mixed reality video out into the world, and usually with my students. One way I do this for my classes is try to use it in a way that gives affordance to having the simulated environment. So this is me in my lab. You can see me down here. I'm actually in front of a green screen in real life. I look kind of silly. Often I'm in my lab, and a lot of my colleagues don't know what I'm doing in there, and so I'll take my virtual reality glasses off, and I'll see like a couple of students and a teacher peering in the window at me in my office, trying to figure out what I'm doing, just moving around my office by myself like this, because they can't see what I see, right? And so these tools, I show you what I'm looking at, and also give you a perspective from a top-down view. And what this is right here, to kind of give a case use example of it, this is what's called a tesseract. And it's, if you've ever taken a cube, maybe a glass cube or a cube, and then shine a light and you can see a shadow on the ground. Some of you have actually drawn a cube, right, on a piece of paper, right? It looks 3D, but it's actually a 2D thing. It's a flat surface. What this is a four-dimensional object, and this is its three-dimensional shadow. And this is a very hard concept to kind of grasp and get your head around physically, and what's called spatial acuity that's around this. And so what I try to do here is show you what's happening, possibly, we can't visualize it, in four-dimensional space, and I'll walk around this three-dimensional object, kind of showing the planes and how the vertices might look as it kind of gets animated in a four-dimensional world. And so I believe using these technologies moving towards the future will kind of give us a better picture of different realities, different constructs, and something like a fourth dimension, and being able to operate in it, possibly, is kind of exciting. All right, so on the other end of the spectrum, this is a application I developed in 2015, 2016, and this is augmented reality. So instead of going in, the difference between VR and AR, VR is you going into the digital contents. AR is the digital contents coming to your real world. So it's kind of the direction of which the contents is being shown to you. So what we're seeing here is a set of playing cards. I can show you. This is a very project near and dear to my heart. I'll show you some examples of this project. I invite you to try it a little bit later. But it's using computer vision algorithm, and when it detects certain items, it shows it on top of the real world. And so this is a set of playing cards, and you're using a mobile phone, and it's detecting certain images and then putting other digital contents on top of it. And so right now it's loading up something called the Before I Graduate project, where students are creating kind of testimonials of what they'd like to accomplish before they graduate from our university. And it's showing videos on top of that. And just using this kind of concept, students are at our School of Global Tourism here at Kyoto University of Foreign Studies are kind of creating experiential tours. We can customize and curate information very kind of uniquely to who's in it, because you're using your phone, and your phone knows where you are, what kind of language you prefer, and your interests and things like that. So two people can come up to the entrance of a museum in Kyoto. They look at the same sign. One gets information in German, the other gets information in Japanese. One person has an interest in anime, so they're getting more of that information connected to the museum, and the other person is interested in Japanese history, they're getting more. So you can see how this technology is going to kind of curate and customize what our experiences as we go through the real world. And so I built this application to help our students start to think about how to design for this new reality of media coming around the corner. All right, so immersive learning. We know there's a lot of benefits to these. The research is showing a lot of great things, a lot of great promises. I listed a couple around here, and if you want to know more, I would ask you to go to my personal website, erichawkinson.com, which I've probably shown already once or twice, and you can see links to some of the research and projects that are related to that as well. But just to name a few, there's some great things happening in special education, right? Students that have high anxiety, PTSD, social kind of disorders or learning disabilities. There's a lot we can do about helping students to train their attention, to make them feel safe, to put them in an environment which they can understand a little bit better. And so there's a lot happening for special education around that as well. You can curate information so you can get that just in time. So this is this is already being heavily used in corporate settings. It's things like places like factories and warehouses where you can get information about what you're looking at and get trained as you go through your job using this technology. And because this technology takes in a lot of information about what you're looking at, what you're doing, you can kind of take that data and analyze it in a way for learning analytics like never before. So you can see how often somebody looks at a specific piece of information and how often they need to be reminded, or how they kind of gaze at different things and kind of bring out some of those things. And there's a downside to that too, I'm going to explain in just a moment. But the most exciting thing in my mind about this technology is the empathy machine idea. And the empathy machine idea is that, and we see this through the research that we've done here in Japan through our research group. When you get put into virtual reality or augmented reality, the media is a little bit more rich. You have more agency in how you kind of experience the media as well. So just being able to, for example, move your head and feel like you're standing in the shoes of somebody else, you feel more empathy towards that person, that thing, or whatever you're trying to experience. And so we have a bunch of research already to prove that this technology, if designed right, it's not just blanket for every experience. I want that to be clear, but can build more empathy, can build more connection to the media or the subject that you're trying to do. Right, so those are some great benefits, but I would like to very much kind of come back to the point that this is not a perfect technology, and there are some concerns for us as teachers, as educators especially, coming around the corner as these technologies get used more and more in public life, in schools, etc. So privacy, automation, and psychological effects are all things that are very potentially dangerous and can, if we don't navigate this a little bit better, at least better than we've done moving into the mobile era, there could be some possibly dangerous things happening around it. So first thing is privacy. So as I talk about these concerns, especially as educators, you can think about what happened during the mobile era, right? We have already a bunch of things that we're just beginning to learn about, the effects of social media, for example, the use of Instagram on the self-esteem of young women, or the psychological effects of loot boxes and games, and almost like an addictive kind of gambling type quality for our young kids, right? So all of that stuff goes into the psychological aspects, and we're just beginning to learn a lot of things that we can glean from the use of these technologies. And that goes connected to the privacy concerns. And because we can analyze things, we know your eye movement, your head movement, your body movement. These are a lot of biometric data, which means things that are natural to your body and things that we might not necessarily be aware of. And because we can collect all that data, it's actually necessary to collect that data for these technologies to work, right? We need to track your eyes and your head to immerse you and put you in these worlds. We can know a lot about you, and a lot of research. You can go on my YouTube channel. I've tried to talk about this and bring awareness to this a lot. We can know, for example, if you use VR for 5 minutes, that if you have a psychological disorder or a learning disorder, or in some studies, I've even read that you can pull out somebody's sexual orientation if put inside virtual reality long enough. So we can pull out so much information about a person when they use these technologies, because we're getting millions of data points per second about how your body moves, how your eyes move, how your voice is reacting to different things. And all this stuff can be analyzed and given a fingerprint, much like your face gets a fingerprint or your voice gets a fingerprint for unlocking your phone and whatnot. Your movement can also have a fingerprint, and that can identify you. And we already know this in VR. If you use VR, even if you're not logged into something, that movement fingerprint can identify who you are to a very high degree. So it's this privacy and how we control data around the use of these technologies, especially in educational contexts, I believe is going to be very important as we move towards the future. And I just finished writing and publishing a paper called The Budding Botanist Paradox, where I see these technologies as it forms, it's going to start using artificial intelligence to inform things that are happening in a virtual construct, but humans are going to train AIs in VR, right? We already do this already. Tesla is teaching its AI how to drive cars by watching humans drive cars at a large scale. And this is going to happen in VR as well. So we're starting to automate our own human processes by way of using this technology. So a lot of the companies, a lot of business models that are around this technology right now is to try to get it out as cheap as possible, but to gather all this new kind of high fidelity, robust data to train AI systems of the future. So who's going to own that data? We already come up with a lot of these things around the AI art. I went down the rabbit hole of AI, creating a bunch of AI art in the past couple months too. And that's a kind of ethical and legal gray zone already. And a lot of that's going to be exacerbated using these technologies. There's a couple of things in the chat before I move on. I just want to quick see what's happening there. As a father, I think public school teachers depend on technology too heavily. I also think they use too many unnecessary apps to communicate and confuse the educational experience for kids. Ramon's comments. Yes. Okay. Well, technology for technology's sake. Yes, I often get this as people think, as an educational technologist, that my first response to trying to, we call this interventions, educational interventions. Like, let's say we want to teach kids how to do a particular task or learn a particular subject. My first thought is to use technology because I know it well. But a pencil and a paper is a technology. So is a floor or a blackboard or a telephone, right? So having the most up-to-date tools or apps or things like that is not necessarily always going to be the best route. It's like that spectrum I showed earlier, right? Real world, virtual construct, somewhere in the middle, right? As educators, we're going to have to think about that and how we put our students on these. Part of the automation problem I talked about earlier is if there's this problem of the paradox of automation, right? If we use it so much, it becomes a crutch. For example, how many of us remember important phone numbers anymore, right? Because we're giving that part of our brain away to our phones and it's accessible all the time. We know not to, have to commit it to fresh and ready memory. The same thing now is true for what I call the phone on the face era. For example, sometime in the near future, you're going to have glasses, smart glasses. It'll have facial recognition technology on it. You'll look at somebody and their name will be above their head. Now, will that mean that without your glasses, you won't remember people's names anymore? It's hard to tell. But the thing is, with these technologies, as they move forward, we become ever more dependent on them. And when we don't have them, we are more helpless. And so here in Japan, especially, there is a lot of schools that have a no technology rule where it's especially in most parts of the day that students are not allowed to have their cell phones. They're supposed to be present in the classroom. They're doing old school things like writing on chalkboards and having discussions face to face, because there is a school of thought that says that if you're going to get together in one place, You need to practice those face-to-face communicative skills and things like that. And that is going towards that thing that I said earlier, right? That spectrum. If at our university, we teach a lot of languages, and a lot of those teachers, they want to do things in virtual reality, but I'm like, you don't need students to come in from different countries and have travel in. You should probably, do it face to face as much as possible, because you're going to practice those gestures and seeing people talk in face to face that you wouldn't get in a more virtual construct. Hopefully that answers your question a little bit, Ramon. I kind of went off on a tangent there. I'm very sorry. All right. Let's see here. I'm already 30 minutes in. I'm going to try and speed up just a little bit here. All right, just to sum up, there's a lot of great things in immersive learning. Immersive learning is just using this whole suite of technologies for educational contexts. It's showing great potential in a lot of different ways to help us teach and learn, but it's not going to be recommended for all things all the time, I hope. But there's also some dangers and weaknesses around using this technology as we move to the future as well. So some things to consider, something to think about as we move forward. Computer labs, right? Using these technologies, computer labs or using technology looks a lot different. It looks more out of the way. We're developing laboratories at the university here, and I'm helping a couple of universities in the Philippines develop some laboratories. It's basically open space, so you can, because when you have virtual reality, you might if you have a desk in front of you, you might hit your leg because you can't see it, things like that. So these spaces that house these technologies for the future look very different, and they feel very different. They're designed differently. And so it's very interesting to think about how an immersive laboratory will look and feel in the future, much different than traditional kind of computer labs that we teach digital literacy in today. So we can see a little bit about that happening here, right? We have some people out, it's kind of an open space. People have VR on. Same thing with AR too. AR is all about getting people out. They're walking around campus. They're seeing things as they experience them in real life. All right, so here's some quick examples of things happening right now out in the real world using these technologies, right? So we have training simulations for the medical field is really popular, right? So you can't operate very easily. So you put somebody in VR, or in AR is being used in surgeries now too, where you can see a patient's MRI scan, above their real body, so they can get kind of a little bit of a feel of what's happening inside of them as they start to operate. Same thing for training simulations for engineering, like working on a jet engine, is you can't always do that, and things like that in other fields. Virtual tours. I'm going to share with you one of my projects where we're helping students from around the world travel virtually and share and exchange their culture and language through virtual reality. It's very promising, and a project that's close and dear to my heart. So that goes with exchange programs. That's also we're helping to develop. Capturing local history and preserving things is is a use for anthropologists around the world now. So you have an artifact, it's decaying over time. So you take it, you make a 3D scan of it, and so that object is now preserved in its digital twin forever, and therefore you can display it in some virtual museum forever. And so the same thing with physical places, like there's a group here from Japan that recently flew out to the Maldives to take drone footage of the entire island, because we believe, because of climate change, that those islands are going to look drastically different in a matter of years. Hybrid for VR and face-to-face events. This is all something that's been starting to be experimented on at our university, right? We're coming back from the pandemic. That means some students are still not quite comfortable coming back to campus, or they're coming in and out because some of them are still catching COVID or testing positive for COVID. But we still want to have face-to-face, so experimenting with having people in virtual reality and in real life and how we're going to meld them together is something that I've been personally experimenting with. And hosting virtual field trips as well. So these are just some ideas and things that are already happening out in the real world, especially with my projects with these technologies. Oh, sorry. All right. Um, now I now that's hopefully some context. You understand a little bit about this technology, where it's going, where it came from, and an idea of maybe um, the idea and the concepts that surround this technology, especially with education. So now I'm going to share with you two, maybe three projects that are near and dear to my heart that I've been developing for many years, and hopefully they give you some inspiration, some ideas, and I could invite you also to join these projects, maybe with some of your students or your classes, to experience them as we move forward as well. And that's all on one of my websites. Most of these projects are related to my business that I created. It's called Together Learning, togetherlearning.com. And a lot of these websites can be found. And there's courses that I've started to open up to the world, so you can learn. If my talks interest you and you want to learn more, I have um, online courses available in a lot of these subjects that are now open to the public, and you can come and take them with sometimes with my students in Japan and some other classes now that I teach in different universities around Asia. So I welcome you as you see some of these projects to, if you want to learn more, it's possible. If you want to participate in some of these projects, it's possible. Right, so the first one, let's see here. Yes, this is called the My Hometown Project. I started a virtual reality kind of vocational training program for our tourism students to help prepare them. They're not native English speakers per se, so I wanted to make something that would help prepare them to design, curate tours in English to give them practice before they went out into the real world and started doing things around them. And so during the pandemic, we couldn't get in the classroom anymore to use the equipment, the VR equipment, so I had to quickly pivot to a distance learning type situation, but that actually brought out a lot. It made this project bloom, I guess, is what I'm trying to say, is because the affordances that virtual reality gives us when we're not able to be together is much better than what we were doing in the classroom. And so now I've developed a platform, and students are creating virtual tours through a distance course, and they're able to share their hometown tours. They create a virtual tour of their hometown, and now we have a database of these hometowns curated by students, college students all around the world, so you can hop in and take a tour of somebody who grew up in some rural town in Japan or in the boondocks of Australia. And so this becomes kind of like a cultural exchange of what it's like to live in somebody else's shoes and grow up and look around as you grow up in places all around the world. So it's become a very beautiful project and a beautiful way for us humans to kind of use that empathy machine I talked about earlier to kind of step in the shoes of somebody else that you may not have been able to experience before. So the whole idea of the project is to explore lesser known travel. It's a different kind of travel. If you're a tourism hospitality kind of student or you studied it, you know that sometimes there's something called a concentration issue. We have this in Kyoto, Japan, where I live as well. It's one of the most visited places in Japan. Everybody wants to go to the same temple at the same time, at the same season, at the same time. So there's crowded, especially when COVID, this is a very bad thing, right? We don't want people coming to the same place at the same time. There's overcrowding, there's issues with locals, traffic, garbage. There's all types of secondary causes of this concentration issue. And so traveling in VR, you can instantly go anywhere, wherever you want. And so instead of going to that famous temple in Japan, you're going to go visit a bench in a park on the outskirts of Kyoto and listen a story about how some young boy had his first kiss. Or you're going to go to a back street in a suburb of Kyoto where a young girl grew up in a mochi store and baking mochi, and how the scents or how the smells were, in the morning, and how they would sell rice cakes in the morning, and et cetera, et cetera. So it's a different kind of experience that we're finding out through this kind of creation and sharing experiences in this way. This is just a quick video. Hopefully this works. To show you a little bit about what this is. I'm going to go off camera just for a second so you guys can see what's going on with this. Oops. sorry. Clicked on the wrong spot. Right. So that just kind of introduces the project, what we're doing. What we're looking at now is how it looked in 2015, 2016, 2017, around there before the pandemic, where students were getting in the classroom. One student would create a tour and show the rest of the students in class, and other students would kind of follow along. And one student would say, hey, look over here. And then other students that were wearing the kind of headsets, and they would look, and they'd give tours in the classroom about where they grew up, or maybe someplace around in Kyoto. It's like, oh, this is the house where I grew up, or something like that. But we had to pivot away from that, and during the pandemic, of course, and so it became a whole nother thing. It's an online course now. Developed my own textbook around this, and going through the process of telling stories through VR, and kind of building on this empathy machine, leaning into it, being able to design things in this new medium, like that, what I was telling to you up front, having that, the skill of putting words together, or having the voice. There's a whole nother kind of way of telling stories through your eyes, and being able to understand that, especially for tourism and hospitality. If you're a researcher, you might be interested to know that there's a bunch of published research on this particular project, and it's gone through a bunch of different iterations. You can visit my website, or just Google me with the Google Scholar or something, and a bunch of stuff will pop up for that. Some of the things that we're learning, though, through the research kind of mimics some of these things that I've told you before about the empathy machine, right? We're pulling out ideas to where we know this technology is helping students learn things in a real manner, but it has a couple of caveats to it. It's not every learning situation is better in VR, or not. It has to do with the design of how you use it, the implementation of how it's been done in the classroom, and the contents for which you use it in the classroom. We know for certain that, especially in the beginning, it has a high novelty effect, right? It's a new paradigm in which to experience media, so the students are very interested in it. So much so sometimes that it's kind of distracting against the actual media you're trying to present, because it's such a unique way of viewing things. But over time, if that content isn't useful, isn't interesting, if it isn't engaging, it doesn't matter. You're going to lose the interest of the students. And so content is king in most situations. You can't just show any lecture, any video to a student and expect them to be engaged. Same goes for VR content as well. So the students are saying interesting things like, I got to relive my childhood by going through and creating these tours. I got to promote my town like I never thought I would. And now I feel closer to my classmates, right? It is kind of an intimate thing, right? To visit your hometown and show somebody where you grew up. So even though they were separated by distance through this program, they actually reported to me that they actually felt more connected to each other because they got to visit each other's hometown and got to see the world through their eyes. So now the class looks a little bit more, oops, sorry, I want to show that video. See if this works. Class looks a little bit more like this. So I created this kind of virtual kind of gallery, and students create posters of their hometowns. And so you're walking around as an avatar in this kind of virtual room, and you might meet another student that's in this room and talk to them in this lobby. And so you go up to one of these posters on the wall and touch it, and you'll be transported to that place. So it's kind of like a portal into all these students' hometowns. And we're about to go to one right now. So there's a couple of posters of the students' hometowns on the walls. And this one right here is Arashiyama. It's actually here in Kyoto. It's a bamboo forest and one of the most popular kind of attractions to visit if you ever come to Kyoto. And so you touch on it. If you're in VR, you'll actually be transported. This is actually made by Seino-san. And you'll get, this is kind of like a riverbed, and you can look around and you're hearing her voice. I'm not showing you that. You're probably not hearing that audio right now, but she's telling you, welcome to my hometown. This is where I grew up, and my grandfather used to come take me here and go fishing. I forgot exactly what she said, but this is how it looked during the pandemic, at least during the earlier years. Since then, we've developed our own platform for this. So we have a bunch of iterations that this has gone through already. It's starting to be more popular. I'm hoping to get some stories from your part of the world, especially see if your students might be interested in seeing what it's like to grow up in Japan. And our students would definitely be interested to see what it's like to walk around and grow up in your part of the world. So if any of you are teachers that are watching this, please reach out so we can get you into this program and share our stories together. This is a couple of testimonials for this. We'll listen to the one in English for it.
Excuse me, Prof. We are not able to listen her.
The audio is not coming through.
Yes, Prof.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. Let's try it now.
To the
Is
final
that working?
aspect of making virtual tour.
Perfect. Thank you.
We were introduced to the theory of experience economy, which explains that the price of experience is higher than any other conventional commodities such as goods, commodities, and services. Here we are also trained to have a good storytelling skills, because as a tour guide, storytelling skills are fundamental skills that are needed. Honestly, this is my first experience making virtual tour. I am very happy to taking this course because since I take this course, I felt that I became the tourism student who has a myriad of abilities that I can use to advance the tourism sector in my country. My thanks and appreciation to Mr. Eric HAWKINSON, who has been dedicated to making this very interesting project.
All right. So that was Shafira from Indonesia. We have a partnership with one of the universities there, especially with our School of Tourism, and a cohort of their students are now joining us every year for this project. This one I'll skip. This one's in Japanese. So this is also just a perspective of one student, and she wanted to tell everyone how this was a great project for her to actually have people visit her hometown and be able to tour it in English, because that's now something that's not even possible because there's not a lot of people in her small village that speak English. So that was very special to her. I would like to point you to TED. I saw that I'm a big fan of TED, but actually this project became a TED Talk. So if you just go on to TED.com and search my hometown, I'll pop up, and I actually gave the talk from virtual reality. So this is actually a shrine in Kyoto called Yasaka Jinja, And I created this kind of virtual construct of the shrine so I could speak from it during the pandemic and give a TED talk. So if you want to learn more about what's happening there, please, there's something more for you. And you can participate or you can take a tour. I'm going to invite you to come do that from the website. So it's togetherlearning.com. You can come and see that TED Talk, learn how to participate, get the materials. But the thing is here, you're allowed to experience some of the tours that are available for you here. So like, for example, there's a ton here in Japan. If you wanted to go to Kyoto, where I live, you just pick a city or a place, and then you can start
Kyoto
taking the
Station
tour.
is also famous in Kyoto, which is the entrance to Kyoto. You must have a panoramic view of Kyoto from the rooftop and
Right, so it's just some things that I invite you to come check out. We have a VR lobby, and there's a bunch of other things. So if you wanted to sign up, this is one way that you can at least look into it a little bit more. And then if you wanted to join, you can either contact me or maybe through Dr. Haider Shah will help you get in touch with me as well. All right, so that is one project. And I would like to, this is one more video I'd like to share with you. These are just some samples of the students' work.
Welcome to my hometown of Fushimi, Kyoto.
And welcome to my hometown. My hometown is Kota Gede, a sub-district south of Yogyakarta city.
Welcome to my hometown, Malacca, Malaysia.
Welcome to my hometown, Uzi City.
My hometown, Meko City.
In Palembang, South Sumatra.
Oh, welcome to my hometown.
This is Hyostasha Shrine.
My hometown is Moriyama City, Shiga Prefecture.
So you notice that there's something happening here, right? Whenever you start a presentation, if you're doing it live, maybe with some PowerPoint slides, you'll say, this is my hometown. But when they do it in VR, they all say, welcome to my hometown. And then, the whole, your mindset is slightly different. Maybe you can start just to tell that just by the way they're talking and how they present themselves through virtual reality. All right. I'm going to switch to one project in augmented reality. I haven't been able to do it as much during the pandemic because it usually asks people to go out to the world, and that wasn't so possible during the pandemic. So I've had to, my passion is mostly augmented reality, but I've been doing the virtual reality stuff because it's been more practical during the pandemic. But we all know augmented reality because of Pokemon Go. And so our students have been creating things like a Pokemon Go on campus using augmented reality and kind of using it. We learned all types of things from Pokemon Go about this technology. Even in the pandemic, Pokemon Go had to redesign the app so you can actually catch Pikachus or whatever that might be without leaving your house, right? They had to design it in a way where they didn't have people go out because this is something moving towards the future as well as a marketing tool to gauge digital traffic with actual physical foot traffic. For example, here in Japan, McDonald's Japan paid Niantic, the company that owns Pokemon Go, lots and lots of money to put a Pokestop or Pokegym in every McDonald's location all over Japan. So if you're walking around trying to catch a Pokemon, you get drawn in the digital world to catch a Pokemon, but also drawn to that McDonald's location in the real world. And McDonald's, of course, has free Wi-Fi, so you'll stop in, take a break, and train up your Pokemon while you enjoy a Big Mac or whatever that might be. So marketing in the future is now melding with the digital tools and twins that we're putting on top of it. And we did this in a Fukushima AR rally. So we teamed up our students, we got some community members, and we were trying to do something that gets the students out, engaging with society, engaging with the community. We have this program, community engagement program, where we're really trying to push servants leadership, volunteerism, and just getting out there and getting real world experience. And so this app, we used it to send them all over the city, and it knew where they were going, and it gave them kind of team challenges and hints, and it kind of sometimes it brought them to meet people and talk to them in the real world. And so it was kind of like a whole day adventure that was built around this app. And so we learned a whole bunch of stuff about how to better curate these things, and we came across a couple of different designs for this as well. We had a mission control where I had my research assistants, my students, were tracking the movements of every group that was going around the city because you can do that in augmented reality, right? So one example of that is when you came to the Citizen Plaza, which is kind of like a library, and you had the app, and there was using this app that I already kind of showed once and that I developed. You look at this card, and it knows where you are, and you scan the card, and all of a sudden the video pops up and is displayed on top of it. And it starts to tell you where you are and give you a challenge of something to do at this location. And so right now I'm saying, hey, welcome to the library. Now you're going to learn about the history of this city. And by doing that, I want you to take a specific route and walk up the stairs to the top floor. And then it's actually showing you the route. And so you'll start walking, following that route. And I'm asking the students to actually look on the wall at the things written on it. And the history of the city is actually written on the wall. But I want them also to start learning a little bit of English, because they're going to be using English and trying to interact with the international students at our university. So they look at the wall, which is written in Japanese in real life, but the augmentation that we've created with augmented reality has the English translation on top of it. So you're looking at the wall that's written in Japanese, and you're seeing the English on top of that. So they go up, they're looking at the wall, they're learning about the history of the city through the augmented reality app, and also in a different language that wasn't there to begin with. And they get up to the top floor, and they're given a challenge around that information. And sometimes they forget, they have to run back and find the place on the wall with the correct information again. And they pass the challenge, and the app says, congratulations, and then sends them off to a new part of the city where they have a whole different kind of challenge. And that might be downtown, or that might be at, we sent them to City Hall. Some of them got to actually meet the mayor of the city through this challenge. And so getting people out, kind of like a Pokemon Go type of situation. It's called location-based education, location-based learning, and they get sent everywhere. Before I Graduate project is a similar thing. I stole inspiration from another TED Talk, Candy Chang, where she took a wall of places that were abandoned during Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans in America. Whole neighborhoods were wiped out due to this tragedy, and she took these walls and turned them into places where people could have kind of like a community art space. And she wrote "Before I Die" on the wall, and people that still lived there would come and write their aspirations. And these are really inspiring things, and you kind of got like a meta understanding of your neighborhood through these kind of installations. So I took that idea and I made a augmented reality version of it. It's not Before I Die, but Before I Graduate. The students will come by and write their wishes of a goal they'd like to do before they complete their studies at our university. And then they'd slap a sticker onto the wall and record themselves talking about their wish. And so using augmented reality, a student comes to the wall and they see maybe some student has an aspiration close to theirs or something that looks interesting. Then they pull out their phone and look at the sticker, and then their face pops out and tells them the story or tells them a little bit more about that aspiration. And through the app, if they want to connect with them, it allowed them to connect and support each other in some way. So it became this kind of community augmented art space that was really kind of an experiment for me in using this technology. And so now I have a version of this where you can actually put up in your school, and you do this along with maybe 3 or 4 different kind of artsy type communicative projects that you can put up in your institutions and schools. And of course, the wall is gone. The good thing about augmented reality is the data is preserved. So now I actually have a copy of the book right here. So it's now all those videos and testimonials are now trapped in a book. And if you still had the app, and now the students have their book, and now they can look back at, see if they've actually done the things that they wanted to accomplish, if they should have the book. So you look at it like this, and this gives an example of what it might look like if you had the book and the app. And so you're looking at the book, and then the video pops up and it's displayed on it. So this is kind of like a semi-private way to keep data too. Like this video doesn't exist except for on a private server somewhere. So it's, unless you have that physical book, it's locked and kept with that situation too. So some good aspects to that as well. So you can see that also at togetherlearning.com. WhyMe project is also very similar. I'll skip that one. I've been talking too much. And now that it goes to the latest project that I've been doing, Reality Labo, which is a kind of rapid prototyping tool related to that. And so I've been trying my best to design an augmented reality app that's designed for education to do a lot of these projects that I've just been discussing, and to host them and to curate them for educational context in a way that's best and try to minimizes those risks that I put forward earlier in my talk as far as data collection and things like that. So it's really landmine. It's really hard to do, but I want to try to give a good example to some of the more commercial aspects that are happening out there. Companies like Meta or Facebook are now big players in virtual reality, and they don't have the best track record of keeping and holding our data for ethical purposes. And so I wanted to create something that would at least try. It's not easy. I wouldn't say this is perfect, but at least attempt to navigate this a little bit better. Right. Well, I'm sorry if I talked too much. I'm sorry if that was a little bit too much. There's a whole lot more as I can share with you, projects that I've done, research that I've published, but I'll leave you to either go to my website or go to togetherlearning.com and take one of those courses that I have available to the masses, should you want to learn more. And maybe we can also discuss connecting our universities here in Japan with universities where you are in your part of the world through some of the programs we're doing with this technology. I'd like to thank Dr. Haider Shah for inviting me to come speak with you today, and I'm now hopefully going to try and answer some of your questions. Thanks very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Prof. What a great session it was. The way you were explaining the things, I loved it. And really, I love the way you started it from the very basic concepts, and then you introduced what a nice way the spectrum, how we go from reality to the virtual reality, what are the different stages, and what a nice examples you have given. And I love the part of showing everything, whatever you were saying, and everything was very much connected, everything was at background, and you were explaining the things, things were coming out, you were connecting the different dots. And I love your testimonial, the people they loved, they are working with you, how can they come and have a project with you, how the different things are affecting each other, particularly the education system and the different models of that. The example which you have given of US, you picked up the idea, and then you worked on it, and the people they were pasting their own wishes on that. What a great thing. And I think that's the wonderful part, that researcher, they observe everything and then they start doing the things which is required or needed. So you are taking full advantage of your skills and knowledge, which is great thing. And the way you are explaining is so nice, so great. I have been to your personal website. It's full of wonderful information, and I believe that people, whoever is watching from around the globe, they will be taking advantage of your expertise, and they will contact with you, since you have international projects and students as well. They can work with you, they can learn from you. And I think that's the wonderful part of the technology, that it made it very easy for us. Even you are sitting in Japan, still you are guiding the people in Indonesia and elsewhere in the world. And the same, we believe that you will be getting the students from Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, and other countries as well, because it's just a matter of learning and expertise. You have a wonderful expertise, and we just saw it, the wonderful work your own students have done it, the projects, different projects, really loved it. And you, especially your command on that, everything was so much connected and so great. Thank you very much, Prof, for explaining everything in such a wonderful way.
Thank you, Dr. Haider Shah. I really appreciate being able to come and speak with you and people around in this part of the world. And so this is a kind of a cherished opportunity for me, and I hope we can make some connections and maybe, hopefully, get some students or people sharing stories so we can connect people in our world in a new way through this technology.
Wonderful. And that's what we expect, and that's what we request to our audience, that please be in contact with the prof so that you can enhance your skills further and you can benefit to the world at large, because everything is connected and everybody will get benefit out of it. So, prof, let us start with the first question, please. Okay. The first question they want to ask that, dear Prof, please share your thoughts on how it will affect the curriculum of the courses in future. How do you see we are moving towards the virtual reality? So how it is going to change our educational courses curriculum particularly? What is the way forward? Yes, please.
All right. So yes, how is this going to affect how we design our classes, especially in higher ed? There's a lot of question marks, of course, but the pandemic has shown us that if there's not a reason, a good reason, to go to a physical place and be together, that we can get most of it already, even just through a video. Like in India during the pandemic, a lot of students didn't want to go to campus. They were petitioning, they were going on strike to make their professors put their lectures on YouTube. Because the reason is if you're going to bring a bunch of students into a lecture hall just to talk at them, that's not enough reason to get people together. And with virtual reality and augmented reality, we can even get 90% of the way there. Maybe with a video, you mean it's not the same as being there physically, but you're getting 60, 70% of the way there if you're just talking to a person. But you can even get closer with these things in virtual reality. And so if there's not a specific paradigm, a reason to get everybody together in that physical location, it's going to be less compelling for students as soon as they know that they can travel anywhere in the world and kind of go anywhere in these environments. Tourism is a good example of this as well. Like in our School of Tourism, students often are asking the question to these communities that they're trying to help introduce VR to, like especially rural communities around Japan. Like, for example, recently some students wanted to promote the city and give a VR tour of one of the museums in that city. I think it was a museum about cultural heritage between Japan and Canada. And the museum refused to put that virtual tour online because they thought that they would be losing out on possible revenue that they would gain because people would be able to see what was inside of the museum without actually having to physically go there and pay the admissions fee. I think that's a little bit backwards, and it's also kind of similar in showing it for in the education field as well. So if you're going to promote a place and all it is looking at some stuff, then of course you don't want to put it on VR, right? You don't want to be able to have it online because you can experience almost to the fact of being there physically and paying for it with just being able to look around and standing there in virtual reality. That means if you're a tourism provider or a destination tourism manager, you have to, as soon as we get into virtual travel much more, you have to be able to provide something above and beyond of some sort of experience, some experience design that goes above and beyond just being there in virtual space. And so the virtual stuff becomes a way of promoting that place, getting people interested in it, and then kind of teasing the possible things you would do there actually physically, the people that you'd meet there physically. And I think that may go a long way of telling what might happen in the future of education as well. We have our virtual classrooms, we have our settings where we can lecture to students inside of virtual reality or tour a remote location using augmented reality, but we have these experiences that we design specifically for our campuses, depends on the field or, depending on what we're studying, but that has to go above and beyond some reason that we've had in the past that we've forced our students to physically be there. Does that maybe answer? Maybe it's too long of an answer.
Very nice, very nice. And I love that you explain things very deeply and to remove the misconception and to answer it very well. So thank you for such an elaborative answer. Prof, we have another one question comprised of two parts. The first part is they want to ask that, Prof, do you think digital world will replace the existing education system or model completely? And second question of the same question, the part B is they want to ask that, Prof, please tell us about how do you see the role of teachers in future? And as I mentioned earlier before the session was started, that a lot of questions we received regarding the teacher development and teachers' grip on technology perspective, whether they have the technological skills or not. So please tell us about the future of the teachers as well, and how can they equip themselves for the future requirement. Yes, please.
Happy to talk about teachers. What was the first part? I'm sorry.
Yeah, the first part was that whether the digital world will replace the existing education system or model. Yes, please.
I don't think it will replace things. Just like the mobile phone didn't replace, sitting at home and watching TV. Having augmented and virtual reality won't replace authentic. That's a key word, authentic experiences. Especially younger people today, they're really drawn to authentic voices because they can smell, they can sense when things are overly produced, or in Japanese, to coin a Japanese word, yarase, which means staged, right? There's often, like, if you have a picture of somebody or showing a video of some place, you often know that it's staged in some way. And you see this in reality TV, where it's not really reality, it's just a scripted thing to look like reality. And this is going to be happening more and more with things like deep fakes and being able to simulate environments, copy environments. But there's something to be said about an authentic experience. And so if you're a teacher that can create an authentic experience, moving towards the next part of this question, you might be better equipped to navigate this new kind of environment. So there's a couple of things happening here with the future of being the teaching profession with this technology. Again, everything's not going to want to be in virtual reality in the future. If we're going to be in virtual reality a lot moving towards the future, there's going to be some demand, some hunger for things that are real in my mind. And so if you're good at providing something that's real and accessible, I believe in the future that would be possibly in high demand. On the other end, if you're a teacher that just lectures and you cannot have a grasp on being able to scale your skills, or it's a particular kind of field, or you're teaching something that can be replaced by some sort of AI agent or an environment that can be easily replicated, you might be in trouble if you're not able to navigate that or create something to help you using technology. Something happening similar to that in language learning. We have a language, we teach, I think, 8-10 languages at our university, and the recruitment numbers are going down year over year. This is because now you can talk with people all around the world using YouTube or Skype or whatever, and you can actually get almost all the way there in a formal language education setting. So if you're a language teacher, you're now competing with every language teacher in the world, and so there's an effect of being able to scale and use technology so other people can access you, and therefore you start to drown out other people that are teaching the same thing. So you have to become unique, you have to become something niche, for example. And a lot of universities are fighting for this, and that's why this technology has a lot of interest, because they see it in a way as being novel and a way to promote their curriculum or their programs in some new fashion, being able to experience it. But that doesn't always work that way. If you have a teacher that's teaching a similar content, you're going to be competing with that as well. And moving towards the future, because of the data collection of these devices, we already had just last week James Earl Jones signed over his voice to Disney, that owns Star Wars now. And so all of his collected works will now be put into a machine learning algorithm. And so that voice is going to be Darth Vader for eternity, because we've trained an AI system to do that. And the same thing happened with Bruce Willis and all of his things. So now there could be a digital twin of him acting in movies forever. And we're already seeing this happen to teachers. There's a case that happened in the United States about 4 years ago where a very popular professor made a course online and he passed away, and the students didn't even know that professor passed away, but that university was still putting on that professor's courses. And so when the students tried to reach out to their professor and found out they were no longer with us, of course they were, surprised. So as we start to automate our systems or put more things in digital form, we risk the possibility of automating away our own jobs. And so if you're not a teacher that's savvy enough to automate for your own purposes and make yourself a little more effective as an educator, you may find yourself being automated away from other systems in other ways. But there's no guarantee either way for that. Hopefully that's a great answer. I don't know.
Wow, wonderful, Prof. Very nicely, you have again given a wonderful example to support your argument, and that's the real picture, and they should equip themselves as well. And I think that's another question is related to the same thing as you mentioned, the technology savvy. The question is, Prof, this is a question from the student, and they want to ask that, Prof, do you agree with the statement that in future, if a person is not technology savvy or not having technological skills, would be referred as illiterate? Yes, please.
Yeah, I teach a class called digital literacy, and it's so important to our university that we require it for all of our first year students. And so in this class, we talk about issues like technology and society moving forward. And there's a lot of kind of nuanced parts to that answer, I believe, right? Because there's still a large part of the world that's never even used the internet, and they're doing fine in their own communities. They're probably, in some ways, happier living and being, ignorance is bliss in some cases. And so going down the technological path is not always going to be the way forward. That being said, there is something called the digital divide, which basically means like instead of the wealth divide, the wealth gap, the have and the have-nots of economic wealth, there is the haves and have-nots of technological ability and wealth or connectedness, right? So you can imagine when you're a young person being connected to the internet, learning how to use it well, being able to train yourself, your trajectory of life is very different from the person that never connected to the internet, never got to know how to use the internet in various ways, never got to know augmented virtual reality, etc. So the path gets divergent and grows over time. But that can or cannot be something that's related to you, but the digital divide can be real. An example of this is another TED Talk by someone called Sugatra Mitra, Dr. Sugatra Mitra. He's a famous educational technologist like myself. In India, he did an experiment called the Hole in the Wall program, where he went to slum cities or disenfranchised neighborhoods and put computers connected to the internet into a wall and didn't explain what they were for. They were just there. Anybody could use them, and observed what happened. And what did happen is some students or young children would go up and start to use it. And it was in English, and it wasn't the native language wherever these cities were. They were teaching themselves how to use the computer. They were learning all these different languages and skills and things that weren't really possible in that area. And some of these students ended up going to different schools. Maybe some of them started down the path of engineering and programming and the STEMs. And so just having access, not even the literacy, changed the trajectory of a lot of these young children's lives just by having the connectedness, the ability, if they were curious, to go down that path. So having the connectedness is only just part of it. It's also being able to navigate yourself through it and being able to be literate in the technology as well. But there's also something to be said, I think, in the future of having real world non-digital skills as well. Because as we start to get more digitized, we're losing our sense of communication skills. Young children are a little more anxious when trying to meet people. Young kids have this experience all the time. Their phone rings and it's ringing. They'll let it ring and then it'll stop and then they'll text them back, hey, what's up? This is a sign of, being technologically literate, but using it as a crutch. And so instead of having to, talk to that person directly and have them see the response in your voice immediately to your conversation, you want to be able to think about that and address the conversation on your own terms through text, through that digital lens. And so it's not always going to be a good thing to be tech savvy, but I can imagine it helping you in that life trajectory moving forward.
Yes, Prof. Very nice. Once again, what a elaborative answer you have given. I'm really enjoying the way you are answering. But since we have time limitations, so another very important question they want to ask the student, they want to ask that, Prof, from job perspective, what kind of skills you recommend to learn and develop? Yes, please.
I'm sorry, one last time. What skills are important? Is that the question?
Yeah, from job perspective, what kind of skills you recommend to learn and develop? Yes, please.
What kind of skills? Well, it depends on what you want to do with your life, I suppose. But basic digital literacy skills are going to be more key as we move towards the future, I believe. So a lot of people think that, well, at least in the United States, where there's a push to learn, for example, coding in elementary school. And I have two minds about that idea, right? So a lot of people say you better learn to code because there's a lot of great engineering jobs out there. Excuse me. That's true. But as we move towards the future, depending on how you code and what you code, will be automated. And so I believe, this is just my opinion, this is still probably very debatable, but more humanistic skills are going to be more in demand as we get through this new wave of digital transformation. What I mean by that is, yes, you will need some digital skills. You'll need to be able to navigate and understand an algorithm and how if you're, for example, applying for a job, the key searches or what process your application goes through before it even gets to be seen by the person you want to see it, and being able to navigate that and understand that and how information is presented to you through Google, and so you don't get swayed by bias or information manipulation by anybody that's able to have power through the systems that you're looking through. But you still, in the future, we're going to need those more human skills that are less able to be automated. So writing poetry or singing a song or dancing, or I mean, there's so many different things that I could mention that will benefit you in your life even as we get through this more digital transformation age. So what I mean to say is, instead of concentrating, I need to learn these skills to be good, you're going to need to find out what you're good at and lean into it. And if that's not a digital thing, then I would suggest don't worry about that it's not a digital thing and still lean into it. Does that make sense?
Wow. Thank you very much, Prof. Really very wonderful answer you have given to the world. They have to explore and they have to dig out what they are good at, and then you can make a difference. That's the wonderful part and wonderful message you have given to this question. Prof, really enjoyed this session, a wonderful explanation and powerful content you have shared with our audience around the globe. So great narrator you are, and you connected the different dot in a wonderful way. Prof, at the end of the session, we ask our each guest about their message to the world. So what is your message to the world as a teacher, researcher, speaker, trainer, learner, professional, and educator? Yes, please.
Oh man, my message to the world. This is not something I prepared my heart for, but I'll try to ad lib something. Oh geez. We're going through another stage, I believe, in humanity. We're moving forward through another realm of digital transformation, climate change. There's a whole bunch of challenges that are pressuring societies all around the world to fragment. So it's my hope, and all of these things that I do in my life kind of lean into this sort of idea that we're going to need to depend on each other. We're going to need each other's help, whether that be countries or governments, but mainly just people. That means cross-border help. That means cross-discipline help. That means cross the digital divide help, people that don't know technology skills and do know technology skills. And so if we're, as a human species, going to survive, going to thrive in this new age as we come through all these new challenges around the corner through digital transformation or whatever, we'll need to work together. And that's the whole reason why I named my company Together Learning, is because we are going to learn from each other. We're not going to teach each other. And that's one of the things I kind of practice when I teach my classes. It's that I try to learn with my students. I don't try to teach them at the same time. So please, let's try a little bit more to work together. Let's try a little bit more to learn from each other together, moving towards the future.
Wow, Prof. Wonderful. And a very nice example. You have given your own company that why did you mention this name of learning together? Because together we can create an impact and together we can do it very nicely. So everything what you have said has a basic logic and rationale behind. And I really enjoyed this question answer session because you have given wonderful suggestion to our audience, and why do you think and what are the basic reasons behind that thing. You explained very well. Prof, really thank you very much for such a great session with you. And to the audience, that please follow our distinguished guest speaker through his research work, and you can email him for future learning and guidance. We have already provided his link that you can contact with our distinguished guest speaker. He is very generous and always ready to help the people. Moreover, wonderful explanation and powerful content which the great speaker has already elaborated will help you to learn about the immersive learning in a detail. So that's all we have time for today. Thank you once again, Prof. Eric Hawkinson. And also, I would like to thank our audience who joined us. So thank you all for your support and liking our session. Stay tuned as many sessions are on the way. Please do not miss any session, and till next session, take care of yourself. Bye-bye.